Hey there everybody, Eric from Outer Limitless coming at you today with another video. Now in today's video we are going to look at this T18 Artemis hunting flashlight from the company Brinyte. Now before we get too far, I would like to say thank you very much to the people at Brinyte who did provide this flashlight for review. Now Brinyte is a company that I came to know at SHOT Show 2020. Carlos from Daily Carry Solutions and I covered the Brinyte booth in detail. And not only did we look at this Artemis series lineup, but we also took a look at the Oathkeeper lineup. Now this PT18 Pro Oathkeeper is a flashlight that I covered in a prior review, so if you're interested in taking a look back at one of my prior reviews, you can check out this PT18 Oathkeeper in detail. But today we're here to talk about the Artemis series, and more specifically, this T18. Now, I do have a bunch to show you and a bunch to talk about, and if you're interested in seeing a little bit more about what I'm about to get into, do me a favor, stay tuned. So this T18 Artemis using this remote. So, here, basically, on, off, as long as you have the flashlight in the on position, this will control it, which is really pretty cool. And so you can mount this on a gun with a scope and pair it up. And then you can put this on the front of your gun and allow it to basically turn it on and off, as well as change the overall brightness. So plus and minus, brighter, less, pretty cool. Now, in reality, I can use just the switch itself. However, there's no way to change the brightness, is the one thing if you're not going to use this remote switch. And as I mentioned, this is dialable, so you can dial this in any way you want. Now the other thing that's really cool about this T18 Artemis is you can change out the LED pill. And there's white, green, red, and infrared. So really cool. You get 4 of them with this. This thing is pretty sick. I can't wait to do some beam shots in a little bit.
Now already, if you look across, and it is not even dark by any means, you can see this lighting up across the way. Now turning this all the way up right now, it is all the way up, but as I mentioned, dialing this in and focusing the light down, bam. I mean, that is an insane spotlight, and that narrows all the way down. And it is basically still daylight out here, and you can see that thing way, way out. I mean, look at how bright this light is. That's insane.
So there you have it, some footage from a recent camping and backpacking trip. Now I was in the remote wilderness. I had some great long beam shots there, and it wasn't incredibly dark, but the impressive thing is you could see how bright this flashlight was. You could see how much punch it had, and you could see how far it really did throw and penetrate. And that is the thing about the Artemis series. These are hunting flashlights. In reality, they are basically made to couple with a scope, and that's why you can dial it in. So as you're looking through a scope on a rifle or maybe even a shotgun, you do have the ability to dial this beam down and really couple it with that scope. Now the interesting thing about this, even looking at their website, I'm not sure at the exact lumen output. It's obvious that when you dial this down, it has a good overall candela. Candela basically being the punch and throw and distance for which you get a good hard beam of light. So because you can dial this down, the candela's got to be pretty high up there. You have a nice large lens here and just a great overall construction. Nice aluminum construction, very well done. The threads on this are very smooth. Not too much in the way of rattle, just a tiny little bit, but I do have that lanyard on here. Now, as I mentioned while I was out in the field, when you push this button down, you're basically straight to that high beam, so full turbo mode. I do not have the ability to dial this. I'm trying to half press right now. That won't do it. Long press. That doesn't do it. Holding the button down. So really, if you're using the tail switch, you only get the benefit of the turbo. But when the light is in the on position, coupled with the remote, well, now you have the ability to turn the light on and off. And this to me is pretty cool. Now, is it realistic to think that, you know, for my case, I'm going to have this remote and I'm going to be using my flashlight? Well, maybe that's the case. Or depending on what you need this for, you could get creative. So for me personally, I would love to get a little piece of Velcro, put it on the shoulder strap of my backpack, take this, Velcro it right onto my shoulder, and then I have hands-free remote operation when in reality I can just turn this off or turn it on, and if I need to change the intensity I can do it from my shoulder. Not a big deal. So thinking a little bit outside the box, this actually is kind of useful. Now I do think it's a little bit limited. I would like the idea that you not only have the ability to use the remote, but maybe you could long press on that tail switch and then also change the intensity. There are a lot of flashlights out there that when you long press and hold it, it will go all the way down to the low mode, it'll blink, and then it'll ramp back up to the high mode and it'll flash again. I kind of wish we had that programming here on the T18 Artemis. Now, unlike certain flashlights, the entire flashlight can be unthreaded. So from the bezel, you can unthread the bezel, nicely threaded, very nicely done. The machining on this is beautiful. And then here, if you're careful, you can unthread the head from the rest of the body. Now, that's not the section that zooms, but just above that, you can unthread this cap, and inside you will see the ability to remove the LED. So if you turn this on, you will see that is the LED pill right there, but that can be removed. And so when we do remove this, we have the ability to change it out with different colors. So this one here being the white, then the next one, threading it in. It is brass threads, so you need to be just a little bit careful, but threading it in there. Here you have the red. I believe this should be green. And it is. So here's the green. And finally with my kit, this one you're not going to see, but this is infrared. And that's the interesting thing. So depending on what you want, you can buy different kits with different outputs. Now again, I'm not really going to see that, and the camera's certainly not going to pick it up. However, this is infrared. So if you had night vision goggles or infrared sensitive sensors on different equipment, this would help illuminate. So very cool. And as I was saying, you can get different pill packages depending on exactly what you want. So you can get different color combinations. You can even get UV. So very interesting that you can outfit this different way depending on your needs. So now just taking a look at some of the parts in closer detail. Again, here is the front head and bezel. Just beautifully machined. All of the machining by Brinyte is incredibly nicely done. This is high-end stuff. It's not cheap flashlights by any means. I mean, these are nice precision pieces of equipment. They definitely have a purpose. And in this case, as I mentioned, for the hunting application. Now, this particular flashlight just having that beautiful bezel, and as I mentioned, everything is really capable of being unthreaded and carefully taken apart. I mean, you can just see the time and quality and craftsmanship that goes into each one of these flashlights. A little bit of lubrication on there, you can see, nicely done straight from the factory. These fine threads just threading on beautifully, no problem at all. So that is the head. Now, taking a look at the LED, here you can see this one here is the white. So that's your white LED. It's this little brass piece, and here is the contact point. So these contacts making contact with the inside of the flashlight. There you can see inside the actual head of the flashlight, there is your contact point. So very cool. Now this is off. What happens when we turn it on? Well, you can see that little green light in there indicating that the flashlight is on. Back off. So pretty cool, just a little indicator inside there, which I don't know why you necessarily need it, but fact of the matter is it is there. And again, as I mentioned, as we thread these in, brass, so you just need to be a little careful, just a slightly soft metal, but threading in very, very smooth, very nicely. The machining and the tolerances, very nicely done. Gasketed in all cases, so gasketed in here, gasketed in here, or is it? Must be underneath that lens there. Popping that out. And yes, absolutely, you can see in there, gasketed nicely. Now this lens is, I believe, plastic. Yeah, it's like a polycarbonate. So you do need to be a little careful not to scratch it, but beautifully done. Now before I put this back together, I am going to polish this up. You can see I got some fingerprints on there. Just want to be careful, put it together nice and clean. And sliding this right back into place, as I mentioned, that is gasketed, so fitting back into place nicely, and then threading that back down. Nice and tight, goes on very well. And again, as we look here, that is that white LED. Threading this back into place, just being careful not to cross thread. There we go. Very nicely done. Seating properly, and here is the expansion of the head. So this is how you zoom. So just twisting here, it's about a half a turn from one end to the other. You can see nice big coarse threads, so a very coarse adjustment here. Bang, bang. So that there widening out, that there tightening down, and what it's doing is basically, as you look at the LED inside the head, it's just pulling it away or pushing it closer. Pretty much all it's doing there. So again, very, very nicely done. Beautiful machining. You can see the Brinyte logo. A little bit of knurling in a few different spots, and all the grip points where you need to move the flashlight definitely helps to have a little bit of traction on there. So overall, very nicely done. Now, as I mentioned, these additional LED pills. So here you have the green. Even though it's white, that is the green. Here you have the red. And then the black here is the infrared. And as I mentioned, you can also get UV. I do not have that with this particular kit. Now, what about the battery? Well, let's take a quick look at this. Again, very nicely machined, and as we thread this back cap off, again, gasketed, as you would hope, and pulling out the battery. This is a nice, large Brinyte battery, 5,000 milliamp hour, and this is a 21700 battery. So 21700, 3.6 volt, and the interesting thing is USB rechargeable. So this is a USB Type C rechargeable battery. It does come with a USB Type C cable, which is nice. And this works out well for me, where I'm actually changing out almost all of my cables to USB Type C. No more micro USB these days, which is nice. I find that the USB Type C is a little more reliable and a little more durable. So as we plug this in, you will see that it does have a little LED indicator right on the battery itself. So while it's charging, it is red, and then it turns green when it's ready to go. So nice little indication there, and these batteries are very nice. There are a couple different styles depending on the flashlight. The T18 Pro Oathkeeper having a slightly different battery because it does not need the USB charger. So very similar, yet just a little bit different construction. But overall, I find their battery life to be very, very good. I have had really good luck with the Oathkeeper in terms of battery life. It's been wonderful. And I do think it's probably exactly the same here with the T18 Artemis as well. And just finally, to wrap up my thoughts as I turn on the flashlight again, here I have the remote. So I can take the remote, I can basically turn the light on or off, and you'll see here this little indicator. So as I press it, you can see that it is functioning. So just a little indicator there to show you that as you press the buttons, it's working. Now, as I turn the light on, dial the brightness up. Now it's all the way up. And I'm going to press the down button at this point, and you'll see the light does dim down. Now, again, I do not necessarily know the exact lumen outputs. What I can tell you, though, is the lowest mode is considered to be 2%, and as I go all the way up to the highest mode, that is considered to be 100%. And let's just say, for example, I use the remote and I turn the light all the way down and now turn it off. Well, now if I press the switch, that's officially off. And at that point, this no longer works to control the light. But when I turn it back on, that's going to go to that full turbo mode. So when I press it and I'm not using the remote, as I mentioned, that is the one downfall. The fact of the matter is, you really can only go to turbo. So if you want to use any mode other than the turbo mode or any other brightness, you do need to use the remote. But all in all, a great flashlight, very cool and innovative from Brinyte. So here, the T18 Artemis hunting flashlight. For me, where does it fit? Well, I've had a lot of different types of flashlights. This is certainly not an EDC by any means. This to me is maybe a slightly larger outdoor wilderness style flashlight. Now, depending on what you're trying to do. Another great place where I think this would really fit well would be performing inspections. So if you had an area where you wanted to illuminate a nice wide area and see a lot of detail, or off in the distance, if you had something that was way up or high, maybe you work in some sort of an industrial facility or something like that, this would definitely work well. And the ability to zoom that light and really focus in, I think, could be helpful. Now, what about the other colors? The red, the green, the infrared, and even the UV? Well, certainly there are a number of different places where that's going to help you. So, for example, maybe you do want to use this for maybe a searchlight. You don't want to kill your eyes. Well, you could use the green and maybe make it into a certain location. Maybe you could use the red. And then if you really wanted to, you could switch out the color. Now, there is one caveat to all this. This here being the T18, there is the T28. That's for another time. I am very interested in showing you guys that. The T28 being a little bit different, where it does have a selector switch. In fact, real briefly while I have you here, this is the T28. So as I mentioned, white, red, and green. And that's what's pretty cool, because at that point, you don't need to change out that inner LED pill. So long pressing, turning on the light, there's your white, your red, and your green. Very cool. So Brinyte is really thinking about the user and what they're gonna need. And they're making a multi-use and diverse flashlight. I like that. I like the innovation, I like the creativity, and I like the quality. All of these flashlights are just beautifully made. They are precision pieces of equipment. They're not your cheap flashlight. They're not your typical EDC flashlight. They're purpose-driven. They're made specifically for a reason, and in this case, the hunting application. So again, I'd like to say thank you very much to the people at Brinyte for providing these flashlights for review. They're beautifully made, no doubt about it. I absolutely love this T18. I have one suggestion, and that's just add some programming to that tail switch. So in the event you don't want to use the remote, you do have the ability to adjust the brightness. But other than that, I don't mind the fact that you have to change out the LED pill. That's fine with me, not a problem. In fact, chances are I'm probably going to pick a color and just kind of go with it. For my intended purposes, most likely going to be the white, but I could see if you're into hunting, you could use both the green, maybe the red, maybe even the infrared would be pretty sweet, and maybe if you had law enforcement or tactical applications, the UV. But again, just beautifully done overall, and I greatly enjoy this flashlight. So alright guys, thanks for stopping by. I hope you like what you saw. I hope you found it a little bit informative. If you like what you saw, please like, share, and subscribe. And as always, thanks for stopping by. Take care now. I'll see you soon.